This story was sent to us by a real listener. It happened somewhere in East Asia, maybe in China, Japan, Vietnam, or Korea. They remember it clearly, and after you hear it, you will too. Welcome to Real VNightmare, where real people share the moments they'll never forget. This story was submitted to our channel by the girl named Lucy who experienced it. Her family had just moved into a newly constructed home. A spacious L-shaped property with 2 floors, a lush garden, and a tranquil pond tucked behind the house. From the outside, it looked like a dream. A bright, open space with a pharmacy in front and a large family area in the back. Upstairs, her room sat across from her parents, with an ancestral altar honoring her grandfather and grandmother in a small side room, and a narrow balcony offering glimpses of the quiet neighborhood. At first, everything seemed peaceful, but then the footsteps started. Late at night, just as Lucy was drifting to sleep, she would hear them. Slow, steady, and unmistakably human. They creaked up and down the staircase, echoed along the hallway, sometimes pacing back and forth right outside her parents' door. Other times stopping just inches from her own. The first time it happened, she froze under her blanket, wide-eyed, waiting. But it kept happening, again and again, night after night. Instead of panicking, she grew used to it. Lucy had always been brave for her age, and no one else in the house believed her anyway. Her parents waved it off. "You must have been dreaming," they'd say. "You're tired. There's nothing here." She eventually stopped telling them, but the sounds didn't stop. Years later, by sheer accident, she overheard her mother whispering to an older relative about something she'd never told Lucy before. There were human remains, her mother said. Bones. Buried directly under the staircase between the kitchen and the living room. A soldier. She'd learned it during a fortune-telling session with a family friend. They hadn't dared disturb the remains. The house, it turned out, wasn't just new construction. It was a resting place. Still, Lucy had never seen anything. Until one night when she was in 9th grade. She'd gone to bed at her usual time, around 10 p.m., after scrolling on her phone. The house was silent. Her room felt normal, but around midnight she was jolted awake by a sound. Loud and sharp, a ringtone, a very specific one. She knew it well, one of those old polyphonic ringtones from a brick phone, the kind her mom still used for emergency calls. The sound rang out loud, crystal clear, and for a split second she assumed it was coming from outside. Their area often had workers passing by at night. People collecting rubber or commuting late shifts. Maybe one of them was making a call. Still, something felt off. Why would anyone be making a call this late? More than that, why did it sound so close? Driven by instinct, she got up, walked to the window, and peered into the night. Nothing. No one. The street was empty. The garden lay still. Just wind and darkness. She stood there for nearly 15 minutes, scanning for movement. When nothing appeared, she closed the window and returned to bed. And then it rang again. The exact same ringtone, but this time there was no mistake. It was coming from inside her room. Lucy's breath caught. The sound seemed to echo from the wardrobe just feet away. The closet she kept shut at night. The one no phone should have been inside. Her body stiffened. Her heart pounded in her chest, but her legs moved on their own. Slowly, carefully, she walked to the wardrobe. She threw it open. The sound stopped instantly. She rummaged through the closet. Shirts, school uniforms, spare blankets. But there was no phone, no electronics, nothing out of place. And yet the silence felt unnatural, like it was waiting for her to go back to bed. So she did. Not 2 minutes later, the ringtone returned, clearer than ever. It was the same phone. Same tone, same volume, same location. This time, Lucy didn't move. She clenched her eyes shut, pulled the covers over her head, and began to whisper complaints. Half to the spirit, half to herself. Eventually, the sound faded. In the morning over breakfast, she asked her mom casually if she'd received any calls the night before. Her mother shook her head. "No, dear. Nobody called. I would have heard it." That day, Lucy realized she'd heard something that didn't belong to the world of the living. And strangely enough, that phone never rang again. Not long after the ghostly ringtone incident, Lucy encountered something even more personal. Something that called her by name. She was in 10th grade by then, and most afternoons followed a routine. She and her closest friends, a tight group of 4, would visit one another before heading off to school together. On one particular afternoon, Lucy's mother was napping on a fold-out chair in the pharmacy area at the front of the house. Lucy and her friend sat at the kitchen table in the back, right near the base of the staircase. That's when it happened. From upstairs, a woman's voice called out clearly, "Lucy! Lucy!" It was her real name, her full name. And it wasn't shouted. It was called in a low, familiar tone, as if someone from the family were beckoning her gently. Lucy froze her eyes, lifting instinctively toward the ceiling. There was no one upstairs. She knew that. Her friend looked uneasy. Lucy dismissed the moment, chalking it up to her own ears playing tricks. But only seconds later it came again. "Lucy. Lucy." This time, Lucy turned to her friend. Did you hear that?" Her friend, face pale, nodded. That was all the confirmation she needed. The third call came almost immediately, echoing softly down the staircase. The voice, calm and unhurried, sent chills down Lucy's spine. The girls sprang to their feet and bolted out of the house without another word. Later that night, Lucy confided in her mother. Her mother paused, thinking deeply. Then she said, "Maybe it was your grandmother. You know, she passed when she was only 39. And the altar upstairs, it's hers too. Maybe she was just checking in. She loved you." That explanation made sense, almost. But deep down, Lucy knew the voice hadn't felt comforting. It had felt hungry. And it wasn't the last time she'd hear something unnatural in the house. One late evening, after attending a small traveling circus with her friends, Lucy dropped one of them off at her house. It was well past midnight by the time she returned to her own home. She approached through the back gate, the garden entrance that led past the fish pond and vegetable plots. Her father hadn't answered her call, so she stood outside waiting, fingers poised to redial. That's when she heard it. Cluck, clack, cluck, clack. The unmistakable sound of wooden clogs. Slow, deliberate steps tapping against the concrete. She didn't have to guess. She knew that sound. Madam Lee, an elderly neighbor, had always worn wooden clogs, the kind that echoed down the street long before she appeared. Even before you saw her, you knew it was her. But there was a problem. Madam Lee had died recently. Still, the steps continued. No motorbike. No footsteps of family. Just the clock, clack, clock, clack, echoing in the dark. The sound grew louder, closer. Lucy felt her legs stiffen. Her throat tightened. She couldn't even raise her phone. The footsteps stopped. Directly behind her. Slowly, against every instinct, she turned around. There was nothing. Just the dense curtain of the night. That's seriously creepy. She ran. Straight to her friend's house, banging on the door, heart racing like thunder. Her friend opened the door, bleary-eyed, and listened as Lucy recounted everything. After a long pause, her friend said, "You're lucky you know. You made it out. Maybe next time call your dad before you come home." Lucy nodded. But that wasn't the end. A few months later, tragedy struck the neighborhood. William, a close childhood neighbor, died unexpectedly. He was just 12. His family was devastated. Lucy joined the others for the funeral, stunned to see his body laid out. Face covered with a white cloth, surrounded by friends and neighbors weeping openly. William had a younger brother, just a few years old, and they had always been close. The kids in the neighborhood often played together, and the day after the funeral, something strange happened. A little girl, one of their usual playmates, pushed William's brother during a game. Nothing serious, just roughhousing. But the next morning, her body was covered in bruises. Large, dark spots dotted her arms, her legs, even her face. Her mother, frightened, brought her to William's house. Upon seeing the girl, William's mother paled. "It's him," she whispered. He didn't like that. She asked the girl's mother to bring her inside light incense and apologize. And when she did, within minutes, the bruises faded. Gone. No trace. No swelling. Nothing. Another time, Lucy and her friends were playing hide-and-seek near a parked truck. She crawled under it to hide, and instantly felt someone behind her pulling her hair. It was a familiar tug, one William used to do all the time when he teased her. She stayed under the truck for what felt like hours. People passed her, laughed, tagged each other, but no one found her. Not even when she shouted. Not even when she touched them. It was as if no one could see her. From 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., she was invisible. Finally, she stepped out. And only then did her friends react. "We thought you went home." "I was under the truck the whole time," Lucy said. "I even touched your arm." They just stared at her, confused. But she didn't press the issue. She already knew. Some spirits don't let go. Years passed, and the strange occurrences around Lucy didn't stop. One evening, she had a dream. Vivid, unsettling, unforgettable. In it, she was standing inside her old primary school. The campus had been transformed. Tense banners and a funeral setup surrounded her, as if the entire school had become a ceremonial ground. Musicians played mourning drums, and the crowd moved in solemn waves. Her eyes were drawn upward toward the main building. Atop it sat a coffin. Brown, wooden, heavy-looking. Its lid was slightly ajar. She squinted. That wasn't supposed to be there. As she stared, the lid creaked. Slowly, a figure sat upright from within the coffin and turned its head toward her. It was him, her grandfather. He looked just as he did in her memories, only stiffer, more wax-like. He raised a hand, beckoned. "Come here." Lucy couldn't move. Her legs were rooted in place. But in the dream, she somehow walked forward. The image burned itself into her brain, her grandfather rising from the dead, calling her to him with calm persistence. She managed to break away. She turned to leave. But before she got too far, she glanced back. He had sat up again. This time faster, more determined, his eyes locked on hers. There was no mistaking the message. "You belong with me." Lucy jolted awake. Her body was drenched in sweat. She sat upright in bed, panting, trembling. The clock blinked 3:00 a.m., and though it had only been a dream, the fear lingered for days. After her grandfather's death, life began to unravel. The house was sold. Her parents separated. She was sent to live with extended relatives. Her cousin and his wife, both teachers, who lived inside a damp, concrete staff dormitory at a nearby college. The place was cramped. 3 narrow rooms, one for parking, one for sleeping, one for cooking and bathing. Mold clung to the corners. The walls felt like they sweated. Her cot faced her cousin's bed where he slept with his 2 children. His wife worked late that night, leaving Lucy alone with them. She finished her homework and lay down. The ceiling fan hummed above her. As always, she tugged her blanket over her head to block the cold air. That night, something shifted. It was hot. Too hot. She kicked off the blanket. And then it happened. Her limbs froze. Her chest locked. Her body wouldn't move. Only her eyes darted frantic, scanning the dark. She was awake, but paralyzed. At the threshold between the front and middle rooms, something began to form. An outline. First a shadow, then legs, a torso. A tall man in a dark suit and wide-brimmed hat. His face, if he had one, was obscured. He didn't walk. He didn't speak. He just stood there still as stone, staring at her. Lucy tried to scream. Her lips wouldn't open. She rolled her eyes toward her cousin, sleeping unaware. Her fingers twitched, trying to signal. Nothing worked. Then the man disappeared. She blinked, and he was beside her bed. Her eyes widened. He hadn't walked. He had jumped space. He was close now, so close. Their eyes met. 4 eyes. 2 beings. No breath. The man leaned in, lifting the mosquito net with one gloved hand. Then, he licked her. His tongue slid over her cheek again and again, like a dog greeting its master. The texture was rough, hot, and wrong. Lucy's mind screamed. Her soul recoiled. But her body stayed still, locked by some unseen force. Then the figure straightened, stepped back, and vanished, as if he had never been there. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. A moment later, a sound echoed faintly. Dry, high-pitched, amused. A laugh. It lingered just long enough to make her question everything. She lay there rigid, unable to speak, unable to cry. Slowly, very slowly, her arms began to move again. Her chest filled with air. She grabbed her phone, 3:00 a.m. again. Eventually, she pulled the blanket back over her head and waited. Waited for morning. At breakfast, she told her cousin and his children what happened. They listened. Then she told her grandmother. Her grandmother nodded slowly. "That wasn't just any spirit," she said. "That was your grandfather. He wore that exact suit when we dressed him for burial." Lucy sat in stunned silence. Her grandmother added gently, "It's lucky you were born at noon. Very lucky. People born then. They're hard to take. If you hadn't been, that thing might have pulled you away long ago." Lucy didn't reply. She just nodded. For the first time, she truly believed it. There had always been something about her, something that made her visible to the invisible. And still, they hadn't stopped trying to reach her. As Lucy grew older, her encounters with the spirit world never truly stopped, only changed in form. They moved with her across locations and years, weaving into the background of her life. Some were fleeting, a sound, a presence, a brush of air, but others etched themselves into her memory with eerie precision. One night, after she had already become accustomed to the unsettling routines of the staff dormitory, she experienced something that felt different, more invasive. This wasn't just a ghost passing by or an echo from the past. This felt like something that wanted her. It began like many nights before. She'd studied, showered, checked her messages, wrapped herself in a thin blanket. The fan above groaned softly, stirring the thick, humid air. Then, the sensation. Not fear. Not exactly anticipation. The kind you feel when someone is watching from just beyond the edge of your vision. She opened her eyes. Nothing. She pulled the blanket up tighter. Just nerves, she told herself. But her body disagreed. Her arms went stiff again. Legs, too. The exact paralysis from before. Tight, electric, unrelenting. And then the shadow reappeared. This time not in the doorway, but closer, near the foot of her bed. She tried to move, scream, blink. Nothing. The tall figure leaned over. She couldn't see his face. Only outlines a sense of darkness more complete than the room itself. The same broad shoulders. The same hat. The same air of deliberate intention. Lucy tried to will herself awake. It's just a dream. Just a dream. But dreams don't lick you, and that's what he did. Again. A long, wet tongue against her cheek, she shuddered. A scream clawed at her throat, but still. Silence. Only her eyes remained alive, darting from wall to ceiling to shadow. Eventually he backed away, vanished. And just like that, she could move. She bolted upright, drenched in sweat, panting hard. The dormitory was quiet. Her cousin still asleep. The clock read 3:00 a.m. again. The next morning, she told her cousin everything. Her grandmother, too. This time, she wasn't met with disbelief. That spirit, her grandmother said, he's familiar. He looked just like your grandfather did when we buried him. Same clothes, same posture. Lucy didn't respond. But she understood. This wasn't random. These experiences, they were tethered to her family, to her bloodline, to the unseen threads passed down with names and altars. By then, she had experienced too many incidents to count, and each one seemed to nudge her further across the threshold between the ordinary and the otherworldly. There were whispers in the walls, a door that would creak open on its own. The way her reflection sometimes blinked a beat too late. It wasn't just the dormitory. It was her. She was the constant, and yet life went on. Lucy graduated. She made friends. She laughed at movies and argued over exams and tried to ignore the flickers that moved in her. Peripheral vision, but they never stopped completely. Because for Lucy, the world wasn't just what she saw. It was also what she felt, what she remembered. Years later, as she sat by herself at a temple during Lunar New Year, she watched the incense spiral upward in the smoky air. The soft clinking of bells echoed through the courtyard. She remembered her grandmother's words. "Born at noon, child. You've always had strong light in your shadow. That's why they can't take you. They can only try." She wondered how many other people had spirits reach for them, pull at them, watch them sleep. How many had been taken? How many had walked into the dark just because someone whispered their name? Lucy was lucky. Or cursed, maybe both. In the stillness of that temple, she made a quiet promise to herself. She would not run. She would not deny it. If they came again, ghost ancestor echo. She would face them with the calm of someone who already knew the worst and survived. But she still kept a light on by the bed, just in case. In the quiet corners of her memory, Lucy began to connect the threads. Each experience had been more than just coincidence. They weren't isolated. They weren't random. They followed a pattern. They followed her. She remembered something her grandmother once said: spirits cling to the ones they recognize, especially those born at the edge of the veil. Maybe that was Lucy's fate. She started noticing things in everyday life that felt slightly off. A mirror that fogged over when no one had showered. The smell of burning sandalwood on windless nights. A sudden cold spot at the foot of her bed. These weren't just superstitions. They were warnings. One evening after a long day at school, Lucy returned to the dormitory to find the place completely empty. Her cousin had taken the children back to their hometown for a short holiday. She had insisted on staying behind, claiming she had to prepare for exams. In truth, she just wanted a few days of quiet. But quiet, as she was learning, can invite other things. That night, the air felt unusually still. No bugs chirped outside. No distant motorcycles passed. Even the fan above her seemed to spin more slowly, as if the room were suspended in syrup. She laid down early, but sleep came hard. She kept turning, adjusting the blanket, fluffing the pillow. Her thoughts circled. Not just around schoolwork or the house, but them. The things she'd seen. The ones who lingered. Sometime past midnight, Lucy finally drifted into a light sleep. But it didn't last. She felt it first as a pressure on her chest, like someone had placed a bag of rice squarely over her heart. Then the sensation of someone kneeling beside her bed, not touching, just being there. She opened her eyes. There he was, the tall figure in that same dark suit, the wide hat obscuring what little she could see of his face. This time he brought something with him, a smell, faint but distinct. Earthy old like dried grass and moldy incense. Lucy tried to scream, to bolt, to push him away. But her body had turned to stone. All she had were her eyes. And they betrayed her, staring straight at him, unable to look away. He bent down again, lifted the netting, leaned in, and spoke. His voice was not a whisper. It was a scraping sound like something dragged across gravel. The words didn't make sense, not at first. But one line repeated itself over and over again. You see me now, you belong. Then came the lick, slow, calculated, possessive. Lucy felt her stomach churn. A wave of disgust, deeper than fear, rose through her. Still, her body refused to respond. When he was done, the figure stood, straightened his back, and simply dissolved. The air shifted. Light from the hallway bulb flickered into view. Lucy gasped sharply. Her lungs released from the grip. She sat up and checked the time. 3:03 a.m. She stayed awake until sunrise, the lamp on full blast. Both hands clutching a string of wooden prayer beads she found buried in a drawer. The next day, she visited her grandmother. I saw him again, she said simply. The old woman didn't look surprised. I told you, she said, pouring tea. He's not finished. Lucy hesitated. But why me? Why always me? Her grandmother placed a wrinkled hand over hers. Because you can see. Because you're meant to witness. She paused, then added, but you are protected. Lucy raised her eyes. Protected? She asked. The old woman nodded. That light inside you, the one that burns brightest at noon. It holds them back. As long as you don't fear them, they cannot take you. Over the next few months, Lucy began to live more openly with what she'd always tried to ignore. She visited temples more frequently, not out of fear, but as a form of peace. She cleaned her family's ancestral altar with careful hands, lighting incense on key lunar dates. She even kept a small talisman under her pillow, not for defense, but for connection. The spirits never really left, but they stopped trying to scare her. And she, perhaps for the first time, wasn't afraid to look back. Sometimes she'd hear the footsteps on the stairs again, late at night. A door would creak. A shadow would move past the curtains, but she didn't run. She whispered instead, I see you. And they never came closer, just lingered, watching, remembering, just like she did. In the final chapters of Lucy's haunted childhood, something had shifted. Not the spirits. They were always there. What changed was her role. No longer just a passive receiver of their presence, Lucy had become a keeper of memory. A silent witness to what most chose not to see. She stopped asking why these things happened to her. She accepted that some people are born with open doors, portals the other side can step through. Some slam those doors shut, others pretend they don't exist. But Lucy, she had learned to keep hers slightly ajar. There were nights she still felt it. That humming in the air just before something appears. She would be brushing her hair in the mirror, and feel a presence behind her. Sometimes it was only the feeling of being watched. Other times she'd catch something a flicker, a reflection that blinked half a second too slow. A second shadow when only one light source existed. But she didn't flinch anymore. In school, her friends noticed a change. Lucy still laughed at silly things, still studied hard. But there was a gravity to her now, a quiet calm, as though she had seen something deeper and decided to live with it, not in spite of it. It was during one of those calmer periods that she had another dream. This time not of her grandfather or William, but of herself. In the dream, she stood in her childhood home, now long sold. But everything was as she remembered: the L-shaped layout, the fish pond, the wooden staircase. She could even smell the old herbal medicine her parents used to sell. Only this time she wasn't alone. There were people, faces she didn't recognize, moving about the house. They didn't speak. They didn't notice her. And then she understood they lived there now. Lucy wasn't in her house. She was visiting it. From the other side, that realization woke her with a jolt. Was it a warning, a projection, or simply a message that the spirits she'd known, those who had passed, still visited the places they once called home? She didn't know. But the thought lingered. Not long after, Lucy revisited her old neighborhood for a classmate's wedding. The area had changed buildings, repainted, new families moved in. But some things were still the same. The shape of the roads, the scent of the air in the evening, the rustle of bamboo in the wind. She walked past her old house. A child's bicycle leaned against the gate. She stood there for a long while, unmoving eyes trailing up toward her old bedroom window. A curtain fluttered. Was it the breeze? She smiled and whispered to no one I remember. No footsteps echoed. No cold gust stirred her hair. No phantom hands reached for her. Only memory, but sometimes that's enough. When she got back home, she opened the small, lacquered box where she kept offerings. Joss, sticks, coins, a strip of yellowed paper her grandmother had written a prayer on. She lit 3 sticks and placed them in a small bowl of rice, bowed deeply, and said, "For the ones I knew, for the ones I didn't, for the ones who never left." The smoke curled upward. For the first time, she felt no chill. This is where Lucy's story leaves us. Not in horror, but in understanding. Some people fear the supernatural as foreign alien wrong. But for Lucy, it had always been family. Lingering, watching, guiding. Even licking her cheek at 3:00 a.m. Okay, now it all makes sense. It was strange. It was frightening. But it was hers. And through it all, she remained. Born at the height of the sun, shadowed by dusk. A girl who walked with ghosts and never once let them lead her off her path. Let's take a deep breath together now and let the weight of Lucy's memories settle around us. Like mist, we've followed her across rooms that hold more than furniture. Spaces where footsteps echo without owners and voices call without breath. We've seen her face the unknowable not with panic, but with the resilience of someone who understands that fear doesn't need to be loud. Sometimes it just waits at the foot of your bed whispering, "I see you." She was never reckless. Never invited what came, but she didn't run from it either. And perhaps that's the lesson hidden in all the creaking doors and cold gusts. What we fear most is often not the spirit, but the silence it brings, the emptiness, the wondering. Lucy learned to live with that silence, to greet it with incense and memory, to mark it not as a threat, but as a reminder that we all come from somewhere, that something always watches, and that maybe, just maybe, that something doesn't want to harm us. It just wants to be remembered. So tonight when the lights go out, don't be afraid if you hear something stir in the hallway. It could be your grandfather. It could be a neighbor long gone. Or it could just be a girl named Lucy passing through your story the way spirits often do. The smoke rises. The clock turns 3. The silence hums. And still, you are not alone. The horror stories of the East never truly end.
That was their story. Maybe you believe it, maybe you don't. But tonight, when the lights go out, just remember, not every silence means you're alone. New true horror stories every week. Subscribe if you haven't already. And if you have a story of your own, send it to us. You're not the only one who's seen things.